all of us have these little phrases that we say, kind of like a language all its own. And I know within groups there are certain phrases that, if you're a generation beyond them, you're like, what? I don't get that at all. What are they talking about? And I think you guys do that on purpose. You don't want us to understand. I see, and as soon as we catch on and we start saying it, you're like, oh man, that's stupid. We're not saying that anymore. As soon as it comes out of my mouth, no way are we ever saying that, and they change it. But there are these phrases that we all know. We know them. And as soon as we see it, we know exactly what that's about. Let me give you an example. This one's kind of easy. A penny for your thoughts, right? You know what that means. I want to know what you're thinking. And it also means I'm not giving you any money for it. In fact, if you got a penny for your thought, would you be insulted? I would be. That's all my thought is worth, is a penny. See, that's a phrase we know. Let me give you another example. You hit the nail on the head. You hit the nail on that. Okay, somebody tell me, what does that mean? Yeah, there's a lot of you. You got it exactly. Is that what you said, Julie? You hit the nail on the head. I mean, you got the answer right. Yeah, you got it. You're a teacher. And so you already know these are called idioms. You've worked on idioms, yeah. Idioms are all over the place, right? And they're kind of like verbal shorthand. We say an idiom and oh yeah, I get that. I know what you're talking about. Let me give you an example. If you walked into this room and there's just a group of us talking, and I just look over at you because you just walked in the room and I say, hey, speak of the devil. You know you were just being talked about, right? And probably not in a flattering way. Otherwise, I'd say speak of the angel, right? Okay, so speak of the devil. That is an idiom, and they're all over the place. There are these entire groupings of idioms that have to do with success. Success is a huge group of idioms because everybody's got their own saying about success, right? I just threw some together. So these are some success idioms. Here we go. First one, the road to success is paved with failures. Have you heard that one before? Yeah, well, it's paved with failures because there's all these stumbling blocks in life, right? And I'm just calling a spade here. I just want you to understand that it's a dog-eat-dog world. And every dog has its day. In the long run, that's even an idiom. Carry the torch if you want to have success. Sometimes, though, you got to fly by the seat of your pants. Necessity is the mother of invention. So sometimes you just have to foot the bill if you want to hit a home run, because success is in the bag. You got to be in it to win it. The light at the end of the tunnel is what you're aiming for, because the sky is the limit. You got to back the right horse. You got to keep your eye on the ball. Don't count your chickens before they hatch. Jump on the bandwagon because it takes two to tango. Put your shoulder to the wheel. If you got to have a good track record if you want to be a rags to riches story. So I just threw some idioms together, and you got a little lecture on success. So there's all these success idioms. But why? Well, why success? Because we all want to be successful. We all want to make it in the world. We all want to climb the ladder, right? We want to make it to the top. We want to see you at the top. I think that's a Zig Ziglar idiom, see you at the top. We desire to get ahead. We want the corner office even if we don't actually sit in the corner office. It's just an idiom, right? We have these phrases about success because nobody wants to fail. Everybody wants to make it. We want to press on. We want to be the one that is leading the charge. Okay, I got to stop. This is... I went the second mile there, didn't I? Second mile, by the way, it comes from the Bible. It's a biblical idiom, which is interesting because the Bible actually has idioms, right? It's crazy. If we're going to discover the key to success, which is an idiom, if we're going to discover the key to success, then we're going to have to go back to the Bible because God is the only one who has the source on truth, the source on truth, right? And in the Bible, we find that there are idioms. It's crazy, right? It's not just an American thing. If you study a foreign language, it's all over the world. You have got to go and learn the culture of that language, not just the vocabulary and how you parse phrases and put them together. You have to actually learn the idioms of that culture. It's because everybody, you could learn the language, you could go over there and you could you could stumble and fail because you just don't get what they're talking about, because every culture has their idioms. And throughout history, everybody uses idioms. And so we could go all the way back to the Bible. If we are going to find the key to success, which I want us to do, I really believe that we kind of have stumbled upon it. There's a little idiom, at least idiomatic. You know, if it's not quite an idiom, you could call it idiomatic. There are truths in the Bible that you could build your life upon, but there's one we kind of stumbled upon last week. It was the hardest thing that Jesus has ever said to us. And it's actually an idiom. And it is the key to success. But before we go there, I just want to show you another idiom in the Bible so you can see clearly that they're there. These are not hidden. This is part of every culture. This is how we communicate. We have these little phrases that everybody gets and kind of accepts, and we share those as verbal shorthand. We just say them, and people go, oh yeah, I know what you mean by that. I get that. And so here's one that just kind of jumps off the page. There's an idiom for you. Okay, so Saul, let me give you the background on this. Saul is going to Damascus. He is he's really being a little booger. He's taking Christians and putting them in prison and persecuting them, and he doesn't like Christians. He becomes Paul, and you know Paul wrote most of the New Testament. God converts him, but this is the story of his conversion. Paul gets converted. So a big old light happens as Paul's traveling, and he's knocked off his horse. Now, being knocked off your horse would be an idiom unless it's true. He really was knocked off his horse. He falls to the ground blinded. And now he's on the ground, and out of this big, bright light, Jesus speaks to him. Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? And here's the idiom. It's hard for you to kick against the goads. Now you read that. Have you ever read that and gone, what? That's the craziest thing. I mean, here's God, Jesus, speaking out of a light. The conversion experience of Paul, and then he talks about kicking against the goads. Even God uses idioms. Why? Because God is speaking in a language that we can understand, and we understand idioms. Now, we don't get this, but Paul did. Paul understood that a farmer, if he had oxen that he was trying to plow a field with, would prod them with a big old pole with a sharp point on it called an ox goad. He would make sure they're moving. That also was his protection. Because if the oxen decided to buck back against Paul, kick him, that oxen would meet with a very sharp, pointy stick. And I don't know why, but oxen don't like pointy sticks in their butt. They just don't. And so, God is saying to Paul, Jesus is saying to Paul, hey Paul, the reason you're on the ground and blind right now is because you are bucking up against me, God. Whew, that's a pretty powerful little idiom there when you understand it. So God uses idioms, and God is going to use an idiom. Jesus is going to use an idiom to explain to us the key to success. Because we all want that, right? Our parents have ingrained in us what that even looks like to us, and yet we kind of get it backwards, we kind of get it wrong, and we've been looking at that as we've been digging into Luke and what it means to live a generous life, but specifically in this 14th chapter, as we've been looking at this idea that Jesus is trying to teach us that you are not successful when you climb to the top, because you're climbing over other people. You're successful when you humble yourself and you elevate other people. And then after he shares that, after he leaves the dinner where he shares that little bit of truth that is so powerful, the first will be last, the last will be first, don't forget that. And he walks out, and on the road he shares with those that are following him this idiom. It doesn't look like an idiom at first, but it is. And it is one that just stuns them when he says it. We looked at it last week, but here it is again. Large crowds were traveling with Jesus, and turning to them, he said, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, his wife and children, his brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. And the rest that are following were like, what? I don't get that. Well, what are you saying? This is crazy. This is more like an idiomatic phrase because he doesn't just come out and say the idiom, which would have included the word love. You have to hate and you have to love. But he just says it this way. You have to hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters. And we don't see it, even if we studied idioms, we don't see it right away because we look at this and we say, no, this is crazy. You cannot do this. You said to us, God, that we are in the Ten Commandments to honor our father and mother. And you said that we are to love our wives. In fact, later on, we're going to learn that we're to love our wives as Christ loved the church. And Jesus died for us. It's no way. We don't get this. And children, the Bible says that he who doesn't take care of his own is worse than an unbeliever. And of course, we know that we're to love others as we love ourselves. So this is nuts, Jesus. What in the world are you saying? If you don't see this as an idiom, you question all of it. But Jesus right away tells us it's an idiom. You know how he does it? How he often does it? He parallels things. Hebrew parallelism is all over the place. Jesus was Hebrew. He understood this technique. You say it even if it's shocking, and then you say something else to help clarify what you just said. He's going to go further, and he's going to tell us a couple stories at the end to even further clarify. But here's the parallel. That's true, by the way. God is love. I just forgot about that statement. Anyone who does not carry his cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. So he says, and anyone. He's following up the phrase he just gave us, which is hate your father and mother, hate your wife, hate your children, hate yourself, to follow me. And if you don't, you can't. He follows that up with, and anyone, so this is a parallel statement, who does not carry his cross and follow me. Now, we can't carry a cross and follow him. That's absolutely impossible to do. But we can do what the idiom is all about, and that is we can leave our old life behind. We can let that die. These are idiomatic phrases too, right? We can turn our back on how we used to be and move forward with Jesus. We can let it go, to quote some famous princess some time ago. We can follow him if we deny ourselves. That's the same thing, parallel with the idiom of love and hate. If we love God, we can hate everything else by walking away from it. Now, I know when you grew up and when I grew up, actually, I actually don't remember this, but I know a lot of you were taught that hate is a bad word. I don't remember my mom ever saying to me hate is a bad word. But I know a lot of you did, and my wife did, and she taught our children that, you don't say hate, hate's a dirty word, and so when it would slip out of my mouth and I would say it, my kids would be like, "Oh, Daddy said the H word!" And I'm like, I did? What? Because the H word meant something different to me. But I get it. I understand why there's, you don't say that. And so even Jesus saying it's like, oh, can Jesus say that? And Jesus says, hate your father and mother. Hate your own life. What? We don't even like the sound of it. And yet what we have to understand is what this idiom means. And once we get it, we're like, oh, okay, that's a call to action for all of us. We got to do something with this. We can't just hear this message. We have to live this message. And so here's the deal. When Jesus uses the word hate in this idea of hate your mother and father, hate your brother and sister, hate your wife, hate your children, hate your own life, if you're going to follow me, he is not talking about disgust. He is not talking about that feeling of, I just don't like to be around that person. I mean, I hope you like to be around your kids. I know some of you, and I understand. I've seen your kids. I get it. I understand why you may not want to. But, that's just on an off day. That's a bad day. On a good day, you want to be around them. You love them, right? You don't have disgust for them. You don't want to walk away from them. And yet, what Jesus is talking about is a choice. It has nothing to do with how you feel towards them. It's whether you're willing to make a choice or not. If you're going to follow me, then you are going to have to make a choice. If you want me, if you love me, if you're going to be my disciple, you're going to follow me with your life, you're going to have to make a choice. Are you going to try to keep your life as you follow me with you? And if you do, then you really haven't chosen to follow me. Even though that's the way the American idea of Christianity is become, it isn't the way Christianity is. If you're going to follow me, you can't take it all with you. You have to make a choice. Hate, then, does not mean disgust. It means rejection. I reject my old life. I no longer want to live this way. I want my life to be rebuilt upon Jesus Christ as the foundation, the one that I truly want to live for. I don't want to live this way anymore. I hate living this. I can't stand it that I have elevated my children to almost an idol status in my life as the object of my worship, and I have to just pay for all these things to keep them happy and keep them elevated, and I have to compete with everyone else who's worshiping their own children. I have to be at every ball game, and I have to pay for all of their uniforms. I'm sorry, that we just got a bill. It gets to you, right? But we have, in this culture, elevated our children almost to an idol status. We, as Americans, worship the child. And what Jesus is saying is, hate that. Reject that. I want to show you other idioms so you can see that this is how this love-hate thing works. Here's another love-hate idiom. Jesus is talking about money here. No one can serve two masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other. And you might think, well, that's going to be, you're going to despise, disgust. Even though the word despise is used later on, that's not the idea here. This is about choosing one, rejecting the other. He is not saying in this context of money that money itself you can never use, you can never touch. Some people go that far with this, but that is not what he's saying. He clarifies what he's saying in the next sentence. Or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. It is all about who are you going to serve. He goes on and says, you cannot serve both God and money. Because if you do, if you serve money and you think about money all the time, and I know, we're fleshly, we struggle with this, and it's on your mind, and how do I get more? How do I keep mine? And I'm not going to give them, and generosity just doesn't flow through you because it just all get kind of stuck in there. Guess what? You are struggling in your relationship with God. Because Jesus says you can't. You can't be about money and be about me. It won't work. He's not talking about money itself. You should feel dirty when you touch money. I mean, I know it's dirty. Mama taught me that. Don't stick that in your mouth. She had to remind me that often. But it's not dirty morally. It's a tool. What if that money in our hands, we realize, God owns this. All of a sudden it changes everything, doesn't it? If God actually owns this, then we are not consumed by the things that we think we own, and they own us because we have bowed down to them and worshiped them, but we actually use money as a tool and say, this is God's, and I'm going to give, and I'm going to invest, and I'm going to help, and I'm going to use, and I'm going to be a good steward of, and I'm going to be responsible with. Wow, it changes everything. And that's what Jesus wanted us to do. It releases the grip that possessions and money and stuff in this world have on us, because we're not supposed to love this world. In fact, using Jesus' idiom, we're supposed to hate this world in the sense that we reject its influence and control in our life, and we worship God alone. So, Jesus uses an idiom when he's talking about money. By the way, this is the same idiom that is used, Paul uses this when he's quoting Old Testament, and it's the same idiom used in the Old Testament to share that, look, God made a choice to choose the people of Israel, which the other name of Israel is Jacob, chooses Jacob over the people of Edom, which come from the people of Esau. And so when you see this phrase, which sometimes confuses us, just as it is written, Jacob I loved, but Esau I hated. That's an idiom. God is saying, I choose to work my promises and fulfill my promises and my covenant with this people group, the people group of Jacob, that become Israel. Esau, though, and other nations, I reject. Does that mean that he has rejected all other people groups other than Jewish people? Absolutely not. We could take a survey. How many in this room are Jewish? Actually, I don't know. Doesn't really matter, does it? Because we all come here. I hope you came here because you want to at least know more about this Jesus, or you're devoted to this Jesus, you love this Jesus, and you're accepted by his blood. How can that be? When Esau I hated, God said, that doesn't mean he despises him in the sense of disgust. It means he rejects the people group for the purposes of his fulfillment, but he, by his sovereign choice, chooses Israel to fulfill the purposes of God. What are those purposes? Well, to bring about the truth of God, but also the Savior of all humanity. That truth is available to us. We have it. And that Savior is so available to us, he died for us so that we could live. So when we're talking about these idioms, I know it's hard because here God is saying stuff like hate, and it just rubs us the wrong way, especially when you tie that together with the things he said to hate. But I think in his infinite wisdom, what God is doing for us is trying to rock us a little and get us off center, because we love to sit on the fence. In fact, let's do just a little survey, and I'll raise my hand too. How many here are really good in this game of life at being a fence sitter? Raise your hand if you're a good fence sitter. Come on, don't be shy. Yeah, there we go, confession time. We're really good at wanting to pull Jesus into our life and keep our life just as it was, and not make a decision, to really lay it down, to leave it behind, to make it all about Jesus. We find that difficult. We find that hard. We basically buck against it. There should be an ox goad in our rear for bucking against God. Right? Jesus is upsetting us. I mean, honestly, he says to us, hate your wife. I adore my wife. He says, hate your children. There are times when they really do upset me, but I don't hate them. I love them. In fact, the times I get upset the most, I think, are the times where they are doing something that I know they could have better. They could be better. This says, hate your mama and your dad? No way. And yet he uses that idiom on purpose, I think, because he wants us to stop it. Stop making life about you and your stuff and make it about Jesus. Make a decision once and for all. Stop playing this game where you just bring on your life and carry it with you as you try to follow. It's like you're carrying the cross and your life. You got two shoulders. You can do it, right? He says, no. The cross represents death. It represents dying of your old self. You have to let it go. You have to deny it. You have to reject it. Reject your old life. So Jesus shares with us two stories, like he always does, it seems. He nails us and says, now that I got your attention. Does he have your attention? I hope he's got your attention. He says, now I want to share with you two stories. Parables, little mini parables. They basically go like this. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Will he not first sit down and estimate the cost to see if he has enough money to complete it? That's logical. I don't know what your tower's for. Maybe defensive purposes, maybe to watch over your land and your sheep, and you just like a tower in your backyard. I don't know. You got a tower, and you've estimated the cost. You're wise about it because you want to complete it. Wouldn't it be silly if you didn't? That's his point. For if he lays the foundation and is not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule him, will tease him, saying, this fellow began to build and was not able to finish. And he equates that with our life when we try to to build our life on Jesus, but we refuse to let go of the rest of our life. We don't deny anything. We don't reject anything. We don't hate anything. We just take our life and try to add Jesus to it. He says, here's what's going to happen. I guarantee it. You're going to try, and you're going to try, and you're going to build that life, and you're going to struggle, and you're going to wonder why it's not working, and then you're going to find yourself discrediting even God and all Christians themselves by the example that you present, and people are going to ridicule you and ridicule others. And Christians, is this what Christianity is? You look the same as the world. You're doing exactly the same thing as the world. It's nothing to me. It means nothing to me. In fact, they resent us because we, in their mind, pretend to have our life changed and different when we don't actually give up anything. He said, I got another story for you. He says, or suppose a king is about to go to war against another king. Will he not first sit down? Same scenario then. You've got to plan this out and consider whether he is able with 10,000 men to oppose the one coming against him with 20,000. You're outnumbered, but now you got to make a decision. Do I really go to war or do I not go to war? Based on whether we're better armored or we have the better position, we're higher up than them, or we have the element of surprise, or our men are more skilled than they are, or we have more horses or chariots than they do. You have to make a decision based upon how strong you think you are to go up and oppose them, because if you head out and you're not able to finish it, here's what happens. If he is not able, he will send a delegation while the other is still a long way off. So the battle's begun. They're already marching towards each other and will ask for terms of peace. If you start to get a little nervous and a little scared because you didn't plan this out and you don't have enough, because you've only gone halfway with this thing, you're going to have to, you know what terms of peace are, right? Surrender. And in the Christian life, here's what it looks like. It's worse than just ridicule, because you've discredited not just you, but all of us, because you just decided you aren't going to change a thing, and you're going to wear the name of Christ, and everyone thinks, well, that's what Christianity is. It means nothing to me. This is worse, because you're going to find defeat in your life. You're going to find surrender in your life. You're going to find yourself going back to the same sin patterns you had before, and then you're going to blame God like, well, it didn't change anything, it didn't help me, when in fact, you never surrendered you. You have to die to self. And so he concludes, in the same way, any of you who does not give up everything he has cannot be my disciple. It won't work. What is the key to success then? I wrestled with this all week to answer this question, and I had a different answer than I actually have this morning. Here's my answer. See if this works for you. What's the key to success? Hate success. Absolutely hate the climb, the crawling up, the desire to overcome, to take other people's position, to one up. Hate it. Hate this push that we have in culture to be better, to look better, to be more noticed. Because all of that will keep you from making Jesus your life. All of it will make your life about you. But if you will just let it all go, Jesus gives us this promise. It's crazy, I know, but he says, if you will humble yourself, I will lift you up. He's not kidding when he says, the last will be first. The least will be the greatest. You want to be successful? Hate everything about the worldly systems of success and flat out love Jesus. Make that your life. In God's infinite wisdom, He has given us this idiom of love and hate to get us to make a choice, a decision. And maybe you need to make a decision this morning. Maybe you need to recommit your life because you just feel like, this is me. This is how I'm living. I'm still in love with the world and I can't let go of it. I want to give you an opportunity to rededicate your life this morning and give it back to God. And we'll just whoever comes up, we'll just surround you and pray for you. If you've never given your life to Jesus, He has bled and died for you. He has given everything for you. He has He became the least so He could lift you up and change your life. I invite you to come and surrender your life to Jesus this morning. If you need prayer, I invite you to come. This is your invitation. We're going to pray and then we're going to sing a song. That's when you come, during the song. Will you stand with me in prayer? Father God, even now, I know, because I know me, we are fighting against ourselves, trying to hold on to ourselves, and you're pulling us, you're calling us, you're asking us to surrender. God, there are those that are being pulled this morning to come forward, and their own flesh is fighting against them, and I pray for courage to overcome and to do the right thing, and to step out and just to have a dying moment right here today. I pray for surrender. I pray for decisions for Jesus. I pray that as a church we will return to Jesus Christ as our life and as our foundation. And I ask for this in Jesus' name.